we're going to really spend the next, 25 minutes or so talking about VR and its deployments in healthcare. With me today, I have Pearly Chang from HTC and Chris Brickler, the CEO of Mind VR. Did that surprise you, the hands that went up that have, experienced VR when you typically are around a group? Are you finding that more people have headsets and are experiencing it?
I think absolutely. More and more people have come in touch with these new technologies. But still, we know since the beginning of building this industry that this was going to be a marathon, not a sprint, in transforming a personal computing platform that will impact every aspect of our life. So I think more and more people have seen this technology, but few people understand deeply why there's a reason to care about this transition of to technology and a lot of the profound impact that it's already making today in our lives beyond what you think it's for, entertainment, etc.
So for those unfamiliar with HTC, probably why don't you give a little bit of perspective on where the company has come from and really some of the key lines of business currently?
Sure. HTC was a smartphone pioneer globally. In its heydays, used to be shipping 1 out of every 5 smartphones in the US market. So a pioneer truly in that mobile computing industry. I joined Sher Wang, the founder of HTC, 11 years ago. So before we pivoted into virtual augmented reality as the next phase of personal computing platform. And so these days, since 2015, we have been very focused on building, investing in this future. And this time around, not just the headset itself, but since day one, we've taken the ecosystem investment approach. So building content, platforms, services, investing directly in companies that are building at the forefront of pushing the envelope of this technology. So you would know us for these award-winning headsets that are getting smaller, lighter, more attractive, but also in various content collaborations that we work with globally in healthcare, in enterprise collaboration, some in-house, some with third-party developer and partners, even the arts and culture in our collaboration with the Louvre, with Musée d'Orsay recently, and many more. Really, the vision is to unleash the human imagination through combining the cutting-edge technology, not just XR as an interface, but the investments in AI and blockchain and 5G connectivity in bringing positive impact to society. For Sher, the founder of the company, is never about gaming per se. This technology is so great, but only as great as we're able to put it into good use in advancing people's lives, how they connect, how they play, how they realize their potential. So that's sort of how we're looking at this industry as a whole. And right. I'm here with Chris, clearly one of the portfolio companies that we invested in early.
So through partnerships, you work together, you make investments. So Chris, talk a little about Mind VR. I spent some time researching on the site. You talk a lot about addressing older and aging populations. So talk about the evolution of where the company came from and why you chose specifically that market.
Yeah, good question, Josh. I'd have to say that I appreciate the question about how many people have actually done VR. I have another question. How many folks in the room would actually feel like, as a society, we could take care of our seniors better than we do today? So I have a big heart in my space for senior care. I've had family members. My wife's had family members that have gone through tremendous bouts with dementia. When I first saw VR for the first time in 2015, I had a good friend at Oculus that just was acquired by Facebook, and they showed me under the hood of what the technology was going to do. I immediately gravitated not to gaming, but to how could this technology really help humankind? And a good friend of mine in Texas was running about 100 skilled nursing communities. He had just implemented a service called Music in Memory, basically using customized iPods with playlists determined by the family that were then, charged into the healthcare setting to create neuro activity. And it was really a really neat project. And I saw that and I'm like, wow, what if we could do that with VR in an order of magnitude more impactful on the senior lives? So that's kind of the impetus of how we got started with Mind in 2016 timeframe. So, and then fast forward, 7 years later, we've been just the global leader in sort of research, backing all this evidence that we're creating in the clinical settings. And the platform has grown way beyond just a music and memory sort of application, where we're now moving into every aspect of senior care. from physical therapy, occupational therapies, to cognitive, emotional health.
Right.
So,
and I think, on the website, so you call it immersive digital therapeutics.
right.
So really addressing some of the key problems, and talk a little about sort of, that.
Yeah. So there's obviously a big movement around digital therapeutics in this country. We're supporting some key legislation in DC right now that's supporting the Access to Prescription Digital Therapeutics Act of 2023. But where I see some opportunity that has not sort of been addressed yet is in the immersive technology side of things. So that's why our partnership with HTC is so important, because when we think about digital therapeutics and we think about adding the immersive component to it, we truly have the opportunity to take somebody out of their four walls of their existence. We can distract them from pain. We can help reduce anxiety. We know all these things, and now we're starting to get all these clinical data studies that are coming in, which we can talk about today. But it's just a really exciting frontier, kind of an adjunct, but still kind of connected to the digital therapeutics movement. There's a direct correlation with all the content that we create and aggregate relative to the indication. So we deal a lot with dementia. This is a very big problem. It's only going to increase over the next 10 years as this aging population rises. So we think that virtual reality and this immersive technology that we're developing with HTC is going to have a lot of legs in the future to help bridge the gap between a growing aging population and a shrinking caregiver population.
So, Pearlie, as you think about, these types of platforms scaling, you mentioned gaming. I think immediately most people, when they talk about VR, go to the gaming and think gaming. Now we're starting to see more of these larger enterprise applications in healthcare. How does then HTC plan and see, will every home, over time have a headset? Will they be engaging? What is the future and growth of sort of VR in the home look like?
Now, clearly in this stage of the technology adoption, we have to be very focused on showing the benefits, the immediate return on investment of adopting new technology like this, before going on to the big pipeline of everyone having a pair of these goggles as their personal computing device, because that seems very far away from most people right now, because their headsets are admittedly not light enough, not comfortable enough for all-day usage, and they are not at this current stage not intended for that. They're intended for great use cases like training. You mentioned enterprise. In the Yale Medical School study showed that VR trained surgeons make 6 times fewer errors on an operation, and the retention that they get to hold on these knowledge that they acquire through VR immersive training is that much higher than conventional classroom or lecture or video style, or a very costly existing way of training modalities. So there are a lot of these use cases that we are seeing immediate benefits and return on investment today that we're working with customers of hospitals, of care providers in implementing them and bring those benefits immediately to patients. So training, we mentioned one, patient communication engagement is another. Imagine flying through your pre-surgical patients, through the patient-specific anatomy, whether that's a tumor in the brain or in the heart, and really explaining what is going to happen and plan specifically how to increase the success rate of a high-stakes surgery. That's another vertical that is seeing great feedback from surgeons themselves and patient experience, making an experience like that much less scary and lonely and unknown, right? And then there's the therapeutic side of things. We're showing a demo here in the next room where you can see Mind VR applications at work. We can see the possibility of treating patients via remote telehealth, right? The clinician can be treating a patient from very far away, and the patients are engaging in physical occupational therapies in a very fun, engaging, and precise way, so that the progress can be precisely tracked as well for better patient outcome. So a lot of these implementations in the healthcare arena is very encouraging, as we see the innovation on these headsets continue to evolve, including a more widespread high-speed network infrastructure, allowing more of the processing of these high-fidelity experiences to move to the cloud, move to the edge. These form factors can become even more lighter, maybe one day just like a pair of glasses that you wear on your head today, giving you that much more immediate and relevant immersive access to your digital experience today. Then really the sky is the limit from there, learning how we connect with one another. But we're very focused at this stage in delivering and educating what is important today in delivering value.
And Chris Perley mentioned, like glasses, a lot of us, go think about early Google Glass and more augmented reality. Are you thinking about what does Mind VR, more broadly as you move into, if you want to call it XR or MR or, AR? What are different applications beyond just what we now think about virtual reality?
Oh yeah, we're at the embryonic stage. I've been doing this for 7 years, driving this sort of momentum in this industry, but we are at the starting point for sure. One of the things I'm really proud about, though, with our relationship with HTC are these headsets. So the commercial headset that most of you probably raised your hand about that you've seen or done with your kids or whatever is probably an Oculus Quest, right? This is 3 times less weight. So we've worked
200 grams to be specific. 198 grams.
But I'm very proud of the work that we've done over the last 3 years with HTC, because this aging population is a very big opportunity. It's a very big, let's just say, less served market. It's sort of where everyone thinks that VR could play, but the light factor has grown the adoption about 30 percentage points from our studies before this device to now having this device in terms of adoptability. And then the new devices that we're coming out with HTC as well will have mixed reality as well. And there's a lot of things you can do in the occupational physical therapy realm with mixed reality. So that is a definite new frontier.
And talk a little about that partnership, right? Because again, it is a software and hardware solution that requires, close integration. And, when Perley, maybe talk about some of the portfolio and the investments and how HTC thinks about partnering with content creators, to make sure that they're listening to what does the hardware need to do, and then from the content side, talk a little about, again, if you were to have just done this in a vacuum without the partnership, some of those sort of barriers and limitations.
We love partnering with founders with really bold vision and a very kind heart. That's where we immediately connected with Chris and Sean and the Mind VR team. As we said, technology can be really exciting, but only for the technology sake. There's very little there. It's all about the founders imagining what the widest impact there could be in their specific markets they're looking to bring this technology into, to impact patient life, to impact people's lives, and that's where we saw a lot of potential. In specifically Mind VR's case, as a senior market for elder adults aging at home or in assisted living spaces, who often go through very lonely experiences, especially in the context of the pandemic in the past many years. And the magic of virtual reality is giving them that portal of going outside of their 4 walls, bringing smiles to their faces, increasing the sense of joy, decreasing the sense of anxiety and loneliness, and even providing them a way to have connected, shared experiences with their loved ones via virtual reality. You ask about mixed reality, right? The possibilities of that when you can overlay exciting virtual experiences, digital experiences in your existing environment. That's really exciting too. We invest in companies that, for example, provide an immersive meditation experience in trips. Some of you may have experienced that. So in earning rewards from your meditation experience, you may place digital mandalas in the living room that has a persistence in your space, and that grows according to your engagement. And there are many other applications. Some of this you see here today. XR Health, another portfolio company of ours, is actually en route to Israel today to bring some of these XR PTSD therapies to the children that have witnessed the horror in the unfortunate events of the past weekend. So how we think about partnerships is how some of these applications, intended audience that this technology goes to, it touches our hearts, and we see not just commercial potential in, for example, a senior care market is one of commercial value, but also of the human potential of what this can do. And that's where we put a lot of our heart, in addition to just the commercial head that we're thinking about growing a business and a technology adoption curve. That's how we see things. There's a combination of both.
And Chris, so you spend time in the telecom space to understand when Pearlie talks about cloud, edge, how much you could do on the headset. I'm assuming that partnership then allows you to think about your applications and where they're stored, how they're processed. So talk through again, as you're building things, how you're looking at the hardware, how the development teams are able to help you sort of, move your applications further.
Yeah, it's actually nice to come back to Boston. I used to commute to Boston for a couple of years. We acquired a company up here called BBN, original founder of the internet, sort of the ARPANET project, and brought those into GTE. Then we built a big data network, the biggest commercial IP backbone in the United States. That became Verizon. Fast forward now, I see an opportunity for mine to create this digital therapeutic network. So if you can imagine these things being in all sorts of different settings in healthcare, where we can intelligently drive content over 5G technology. So our triadic relationship between HTC and AT&T on the 5G side of things is really progressing. There's a really strong focus with AT&T on healthcare. So our goal is to make these accessible to all people that have any number of indication, but can find relief to some of these symptoms, side effects to various conditions.
So obviously, when we talk about an aging population, we don't immediately think, oh wow, tech adopters, right? The people who are racing to try new technologies. Many of us are tech support to our parents, grandparents. How do you overcome some of that, and how much of the experience is actually driven by the person themselves versus a caregiver or someone in an assisted living? How do you balance the consumer, the person who's ultimately using it, as well as someone who has to actually help guide them through that?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so we make this very accessible for caregivers. There's a care tablet that we package with the headset. So in many cases, when we think about an 85-year-old with dementia, they're not going to be able to navigate a gaming system that was developed for gamers, right? So we make that very easy on a tablet to where we can dial up. Let's go to the puppy den, or let's go to the safari, or let's do this trip, or let's do this brain game. So that is dialed up with the caregiver, and we just have a study coming out. I don't want to steal the thunder on Dr. Jeremy Bailenson from Stanford, but he's going to be announcing this in the next couple of weeks. But they have done the largest study that's ever been done in VR in the aging population recently, and we were thrilled to be, we're honored to be part of that using our product. But bottom line is 83% of caregivers reported in this huge study that's gone on for the entire year of 2022, 83% reported that the caregiver reported that is increased the relationship with that older adult. And if you think about that, that's a big challenge in senior care, is that relationship between caregiver and which is oftentimes a revolving door, and elder. So we're extremely excited about what we're doing with Stanford here on that caregiver front.
I'll just add to that as well in terms of the audience of seniors. And actually the seniors and pediatric population are maybe surprisingly fantastic early adopters of this technology, which is naturally intuitive because it's three-dimensional. And those of us that have been more polluted by 2D screens and 2D interfaces might find it a bigger jump than otherwise senior adult and pediatric population. It's so natural for them. They go in there and they touch everything. They know intuitively how to interact, how to benefit from these experiences. We are all innately three-dimensional animals with three-dimensional senses. So I think this is not so much of necessarily a gamer or a difficult tech adoption, but a natural evolution of what fits our ergonomics, our senses much more naturally. And to add to a survey as well, we recently done a survey with 400 healthcare professionals that have adopted virtual reality, and more than 90% of them said that they either like or love their adoption of the technology, how it impacts the effectiveness of their current workflow. So that's very encouraging. And for those that have not done so, believe that they will be adopting this technology in the healthcare setting in the next 3 years. So we see tremendous potential in how this technology can continue to be introduced and make a difference in the healthcare setting.
Sorry if I missed it, but I was just thinking about the digital therapeutic aspect and the reimbursement pathway. I don't think you've mentioned that yet, as far as like the Achilli and Paratherapeutics, obvious examples of things that haven't gone as well as they'd hoped. So I was just wondering, even though there's a ton of positive research and positive experience, do you see a reimbursement pathway through insurance?
Yeah, great question. Do we see a reimbursement pathway as it relates to XR and health? Absolutely. We celebrated earlier this year, we were the first company in the world to ever be approved by CMS as a Medicare Advantage benefit. That's one area that we've started to crack the code with CMS. We've also got this bill in DC that's it's a bipartisan bill, and I'd encourage everybody to check it out. It's called Access to Prescriptive Digital Therapeutics. We've created a website to learn about that called digitaltherapynow.org. There is wonderful movement on both sides of the aisle around opioid and antipsychotic overuse and how digital therapeutics, especially immersive therapeutics, will help that problem. As it relates to fee-for-service type CPT codes, our advocacy has driven the first CPT codes to be established this year on January 1st for virtual reality in physical therapy and occupational therapy settings. So they're actual RCPT. Mind you, they are tracking codes at this point in time, but the reason CMS does this is so they can now analyze this over a 2-year period and then assign dollars, essentially, that would be reimbursed on those codes that you can stack in an OT or PT session. When that happens, this industry is going to go to another level.
Learning from our portfolio companies' experience too, the CPT codes are that are existing is what they're using to directly collect revenues from the payers, and that of course comes through a long period of time to work with dozens, 100 different insurance payers, establishing those contracts to be able to give these immersive therapeutics directly to patients without upfront payment, and then collecting those revenues through these established CPT codes with these contracted payers. So this business model, I've seen it in work for the past few years. Of course, in markets where there's single payer system, this system works much more effectively and fast for the startup operation. But there are many different activities on the legislative front that I know is progressing. But in terms of commercially collecting these revenues based on existing CPT codes for XR therapeutics, I've seen those in action already in the past few years in our portfolio companies.
So can I get Medicare to pay for one for my Xbox? Is that how that's going to work? You touched on, I think you briefly touched on it, but from a telehealth perspective, like how do you see that evolving, and what's kind of the roadmap there in terms of being able to use one of these either in my house to connect to my physician directly? How's that going to look?
Yeah, so, sure. Some of the solutions I see today is, for example, XR Health that you'll see in the room next door. The clinician would be joining via voice to direct the session, whether that's physical therapy session, occupational therapy session, or mental health professional could join in via voice. But of course, that can quickly evolve into avatar for a shared presence in the 3-dimensional environment where they're doing different therapeutic activities. Then clearly the patients can benefit from getting all these precision therapies at the comfort of their home. Aaron here is developing specifically for pediatric mental health therapies, where the psychotherapist can appear as a big bear, as a different, as a less scary and more approachable healthcare provider in the virtual environment to facilitate better delivery of care. So the possibilities are endless, whether as voice, as through a presence of an avatar, a lifelike avatar, or a cartoonish avatar in the wildest dream of the patients. I think the magic of the technology is clearly to transport and then to feel that sheer sense of presence despite being physically far away. So I look forward to development in this space for sure.